Hello there, and I'm Jamal Nyers, and welcome to the second episode of the Boxing Breakdown. This week we're going to be discussing the fallout from George Groves' Chris Eubank and all the latest stories in the sport from the past 7 days. Now, as I mentioned, there's nowhere else to start really than the Ali Trophy, the semi-finals, the fight that has got the whole world talking in the build-up. How was George Groves going to deal with the power of Chris Eubank? Was Chris Eubank the elite boxer that he said he was? Well, I think we all found out the answer to both of those questions this weekend. Chris Eubank Jr., I think this fight went exactly the way that the purists thought it would, and it definitely surprised me. I'm not going to act like I was rooting for George to win the fight the whole time, because, as I said last week, I was changing my mind near enough every other day during fight week. I thought Chris Eubank had the power to catch George Groves in the earlier rounds, and he had the aggression to close the distance, and I felt that was where Eubank was going to be the most successful during the fight, and I felt that he had developed leaps and bounds since the Billy Joe Saunders performance. But I thought if Groves could withstand those early rounds of pressure, then maybe be able to box him, move him and punish him for missing those shots. Because what did end up happening, Eubank just overcommitted on those power shots, and it was so easy for George to telegraph them. It was just borderline embarrassing. I don't want to say that because Chris had a lot of negative criticism from the likes of Prince Nassim, which is going to be really cutting to a guy like Chris Eubank Jr. Obviously, his dad was his idol, but Prince Nassim is one of the most beautiful fighters to watch in hindsight in terms of what he achieved in the career and how he expressed his confidence outside of the ring and transferred that into the ring, which is a big problem for Chris Eubank Jr. He puts all this pressure on himself. During fight week, he looked so confident, it was unbelievable. He gets people believing. He gets the general public believing that there's no way that he doesn't believe what he's saying, that he can deliver in the ring. He certainly had me believing at my moments during fight week, but like I said, George just made it look easy in there. He looked like Eubank Jr. didn't belong at that level. And it's got to be debilitating, not just to Junior who was in there, but to Senior as well, because this is definitely a defining fight of Chris Eubank Jr.'s career in terms of the magnitude and everything that was at stake during this fight. The world was watching. Everybody had sort of forgot, definitely the casuals had forgot about the Billy Joe Saunders fight and believed that he could reach the highest levels of the sport. But this is a rude awakening for Chris Eubank Senior, his dad. He has to take a step back. You can't be going into huge fights against guys like George Groves and saying, my son doesn't need a trainer. He's got God-given talent. God-given talent? Are you serious? You're going in there with one of the best fighters in Britain right now and an amazing, technically gifted boxer. And let's not forget, this isn't the best George Groves we've seen. I know Haye said after the fight, this is the best George Groves we've seen. Some people said that the Groves that faced DeGale is the best Groves we've seen. This isn't the best Groves we've seen. This wasn't a masterclass from Groves by any means. It was just Eubank's game plan was so easy to read in there, and the fact that he didn't have a trainer just makes it even worse, because the role of a cornerman and a trainer is to tell you the things as a fighter, the things that you are not seeing in there, and how you can change that and bring the fight in your favour. Eubank had one plan. There's no plan B, there's no plan C. When things don't go Eubank's way, he goes into panic mode and he relies on his power too much, and he throws from the hip, and he doesn't plant his feet when he's throwing his shots. He was literally nearly falling over because he wasn't doing simple things like planting his feet. So it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch because I'm actually a fan of Chris Eubank Jr. and I'd love to see him somewhat emulate what his dad did, because I feel like guys that can go in there and back up the trash talk that they're saying in the ring, and he's done that to a certain extent, but he's only doing it against guys that will stand and trade with him in the ring, and that isn't the sport of boxing. The sport of boxing is to avoid getting hit and hitting your opponent. That is it. It's not go and stand and trade until one of you falls over. It's an art form, and Chris needs someone to teach him the fundamentals of the sport in order to get to that world level. And people are talking about as if he's a young man and he's got his career ahead of him. George Groves is 29, like I said last week. Eubank Jr is 28. He's in what should be the prime of his career right now. But I don't want to be one of these guys to rain on Eubank's parade, because he did show a lot of heart in there. Every round he was trying to catch Groves with a shot that would put him out on the canvas. It didn't work for him, but I just hope this humbles him and makes him recognise that there is a lot more to the sport than just looking like a fighter and having the lifestyle of a fighter, because that is definitely more appealing to him than perfecting the art that he's training in. So I'm not going to say too much about that, because everyone knows how that fight went. In terms of one of the biggest stories this week now is Bramer has pulled out of the Callum Smith fight. So Callum Smith has a new opponent, Nicky Holkson, who is an ex-kickboxer from Glory. I don't know if there's any MMA fans out there, but he's a world champion in kickboxing. Hasn't had a storied boxing career so far. He only has 13 wins. I think this is going to be an easy fight for Callum Smith just because of the short notice. It's a shame that this has happened on fight week, considering the momentum that the Ali Trophy has had. And when you pair that with the injury that Groves sustained after the fight, the shoulder injury, it's not going to be an easy time for the promoters. But the fight that the fans want to see, Callum Smith versus George Groves, that's a very interesting fight, considering the reach advantage that Smith has. Definitely the biggest fight of his career so far, massive step up in competition. It'd be a difficult one to call. It's definitely a tougher fight on paper than Eubank was against Groves. It'd be interesting to see. I'll never count out a Smith brother, just because they train so hard and they've all been there at the elite level. Liam's been in there against Canelo. Paul Smith's had numerous amounts of big stage fights. They've all been there at the highest level, and now it's Callum's time, and I feel Callum is definitely the most gifted out of the Smith brothers. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Now also this week we've had the David Haye versus Tony Bellew press conference. Finally we're getting momentum towards this fight now, after it was sadly called off in December due to an injury from David Haye, which hasn't helped. It's definitely not helped his reputation with the fans after the first fight, because he gave all the big talk, said that Tony Bellew didn't belong in the same ring as him. And to be fair to him, he's not done the thing that he did against Klitschko and blamed it on an injury. He's admitted Tony was the better man, because Tony was the better man on the night. Tony did outbox him in the early rounds. David had some success on one leg. But make no mistake about that, that was one of the fights of the year last year, in a fight that many people wrote off as a freak show, essentially, that Tony Bellew shouldn't be hanging around the heavyweight division. This has made Tony Bellew a massive star. It's brought David Haye back from the dead, essentially. He was boxing on Dave. No one... I certainly wasn't watching the fights that he was having on there. He looked like he was essentially in bar fights week in, week out. Wasn't great to watch. So David Haye's back in the limelight. It was definitely a weird back and forth they had this week, because there was an element of respect after that fight, after the first fight. They embraced. David said that Tony was the better man on the night, and I felt that Tony felt that he had to build the fight essentially from the beginning of the first one, that trash talk sells, because these are fierce enemies, and it was the punch that David threw at the press conference that got the world's attention for this fight. So it did feel a bit forced on Tony's part, but Tony is a trash talker, so I'm not trying to say that he's acting out of character. I felt that he was trying to sell the fight, but these two genuinely do not like each other. And on the flip side, David as well. David was giving it in the first fight, and now he's giving it this very humble approach where he's just complimenting Tony, which must be really aggravating him, and it was, because he was trying to goad him into an argument. And I think David's going in there with a mindset that withstanding from any trash talk or any mental, any mind games pre-fight might be a key to his victory. If you ask me on the spot now who's going to win that fight, I think a prime David Haye beats Tony Bellew, but we don't have a prime David Haye now. David Haye is essentially doing the same thing that Eubank Jr was doing, and I'm by no means comparing those two guys. I'm comparing them outside of the ring. They're very much focused on the idea of looking like a fighter, promoting themselves on Instagram with a luxury lifestyle, boats, the cars, the women. That's not what a fighter is. It's all well and good doing that and trying to be a good role model for people coming up, but you can see when it definitely takes over the fighter's life. And Tony Bellew is just in love with the sport, and he has so much heart. He's not brash on social media. A very humble guy. So that's an interesting fight. In terms of other news this week, we have Eddie Hearn saying that Anthony Joshua could be stepping in there with Big Baby Miller should he get through Joseph Parker on March 31st. Now, that's an interesting fight. I feel like he's saying that now because the Deontay Wilder fight might not happen. That's just going to constantly get builded up. That and the Deontay Wilder fight with Joshua and the Tyson Fury fight with Joshua, they're the two biggest fights in boxing, in all of boxing, across all weight divisions right now. So I feel like they're going to try and milk that as much as they can. And that's not a shot at Eddie Hearn or anything, because Eddie Hearn's been trying to make this fight with Deontay Wilder for a long time now, but I feel like they benefit a lot more by going over there in the States first prior to the Deontay Wilder fight to fully get AJ's name out there. It'd be a great way to sell him to the American audience, but I'm sure the hell of a lot of Americans know who Anthony Joshua is right now. We also have a big night at the Victoria Warehouse here in Manchester. Eddie Hearn's hosting a next-gen event, which is a great way for fans who aren't going to be there, who will tune in on Sky Sports, to see the local guys around the small hall circuit do their thing, because there's a lot of up-and-coming talent in Manchester, and not just in Manchester. These next-gen shows happen all across the country. I think it's every month or every 2 months. But there's a guy there's Sam Hyde that is definitely developing a great reputation in the cruiserweight division after signing with Eddie Hearn, signing with Matchroom and signing with Joe Gallagher. What a great gym, what a great bunch of guys to be around. But there is one guy that is very under the radar that not many people know about, that is developing a great reputation here in the Northwest, and his name is Osman Haslam. He has absolutely wowed me when I've gone and watched him live. He has everything. He has the speed, he has the power. He doesn't rush in there looking for the finish. He picks his shots, and he's beautiful to watch. He's a long-time training partner with Amir Khan, and he's now signed with Joe Gallagher. So, again, like I said, with the situation with Sam Hyde, what a great bunch of guys to be around. You've got guys like Anthony Corolla. You've got up-and-coming guys like Callum Smith. These guys are going to push each other to the limits, and you know, greatness surrounds greatness, and I feel that Osman could be a potential world champion. So definitely look out for him. We also have Joe Murray on the card. Natasha Jones is on the card as well. So it's going to be an exciting night, so make sure you tune in to that. Hosea Burton as well. Great little card there on a Sunday as well, so I'm guessing none of you are going to be doing much on a Sunday. In terms of any other news stories this week, there's not a great deal, apart from the Tony Bellew and David Haye press conference, really. But early in the week, I caught up with a very interesting guy who's a proven proven talent in the combat sports world. He is a really established MMA fighter who is literally just transitioning to the sport of boxing now. He's not had a pro boxing fight yet, but Frank Warren has signed him up. His name is Jack McGann. He's only 24 years old, and I caught up with him earlier this week, so let's see what he had to say. So I'm here with Jack McGann, who's just transitioned over from MMA to boxing, and he's signed with one of the biggest promoters in the game, Frank Warren. Can you explain how that transition has come about and how long you've been thinking about making that move?
A while really, even though I've had a long MMA career, because I started at a young age. I've had 16 pro fights, 5 of them was international, on one of the biggest shows in the world, in fight nights in Russia, against some of the best people in the world as well. And I had a bit of an up and down year over there, but I had to go over to Russia because I was stuck in a position where to fight next and whatever, so it happened at a good time as well. And I had a few bad decisions that could have went my way and a few other things and whatever, and it was either stick with Russia, where I wasn't really the happiest. The promotion treated me great and all that and whatever, but I wasn't happy with what was happening. Come back to England and start MMA again, where there's not really no money and the fights are a bit whatever, or try something new. So I've always been great at boxing, and for years everyone's always said, why don't you box, and this and that. So this was just the right time to give it a go, and it's not like I'm just starting again and giving it a go. I am gonna sign. I've signed with Frank Warren, and I'm gonna start having decent fights, and I'm not going. It's not like I'm starting again, so I'm not going back to fighting in sports all against big men. Do you know what I mean? I'll start at a good level and I'll go from there and move fast.
Are you looking to balance the two sports? Because a lot of fighters, MVP, Michael Venom Page, he's trying to make a career in boxing alongside his MMA career. Are you firmly shutting the door now on MMA?
That's what I mean. I'm 24, as I said, I've had 16 fights at top level. I can go and play darts for 2 years if I want to, and then starting again at 26, I still have that experience behind me and whatever. So I can afford to take a bit of time off. But at the minute, I'm not saying I'm not going to fight MMA again, because I don't know how it's going to go. I might be sitting there after this next fight with my face like this, going like I'm going to do that. But no, I'm gonna do great at boxing, and for now, I'm just boxing, but I haven't closed the door on MMA.
How many promoters were you discussing a deal with, and why was Frank Warren the one that you chose to sign with?
We were talking to a few, and we had a few options. But I think we stuck with Frank because he's, when you talk about boxing in England, there's only a few names, and Frank's one of them. And I think there's just the shows he's putting on now and all that. It was the right move, and we've got a good relationship with him. He's a top fella.
Now, obviously, it's a longer in-ring time in terms of the performance that you're going to put out in a boxing ring. Eventually, you're not going to start at 12 rounds, but that's the goal, isn't it, to get on those? Do you feel like your body's more prepared from coming across from MMA?
It is totally different.
It's a tougher sport.
Yeah, right? I say the way I look at it is, I say to train for the MMA fight is tougher on your body, and there's no way you can argue that, because you've got to do well more things. You've got to wrestle, you've got to eat jiu-jitsu, you've got to eat cardio, across that, you've got to box, kickboxing, everything else. You know what I mean? And there's only so many days in a week, but I think box fights will be harder just because the talent pool's deeper, because you have only got to focus on one thing. Do you get what I mean? Yeah. Like they're all specialists, they're all technicians. That's why even in top, it's like if you look at the top level in boxing, they're all near enough perfect in the technique. Whereas you get the top level in MMA, they're always a specialist in something, and then something's lacking. And do you get what I mean? Because you can't cover everything because there's just too much. So that's the way I look at it. Is
it a sport that you've always admired from a young boy, and did you always think that you were going to eventually step in the boxing ring?
Yeah, I've always loved boxing. Even if you watch me MMA fights, like I can kick, I can wrestle, I can do everything. But I always went out there and looked like a boxer. Like I never, even though I've finished a few fights with knees and whatever, I never went in there to sit you down or kick you or whatever. It was always, if I was doing damage, it was with my hands, and that's why I've got shows. I've got 10 first round knockouts, and most of them were with punching. You know what I mean? So I think you don't know. Maybe I should have been a boxer. I've done MMA for a few years, and you don't know. I'm on a shine, but that's the other thing. I perform boxing now, and I know that because I've sparred like top level guys like Martin Murray and Brian Rose and all people like that. And I'm not delusional. I know that a spar's a spar, but still they've used me before and they keep coming back to me to work with them. So something's there, do you know what I mean? And that's when I was doing it with everything else. But now I'm just focusing on just boxing, and I think the level will go through the roof.
Who were the fighters that you looked up to in the sport of boxing growing up that you kind of wish, not to emulate, but serve as a sort of guide in the sport, if you will?
You know, as cliche as it sounds, I'm an admirer of Muhammad Ali, mate, but he's all over me. Got like a little shrine to him when you go into ours. But that was more so just him as a person, not so much his fights and whatever. But I wasn't like a big crazy fight fan growing up. I'm still not now. I don't sit there studying fights, but it's more so people who inspire me are more so people who've like achieved great things who haven't come from a lot, you know what I mean? It's like especially Scousers as well, they're like all the Smith brothers and Tony Bellew and any of them, any Scousers as well. That's who inspires me, and I want to be like them, you know what I mean?
Now, your dad's a key figure in the MMA world. What's his opinion been on the transition? Did he initially support it, or does he support it now?
Yeah, you know, my dad's he's been one of the top MMA managers in the world in MMA. Dana White used to say no one gets more money for lads or gets better deals than Anthony, and some other fella, forget his name, but so it's not like he wouldn't let me do something what didn't make sense, you know what I mean? Yeah. So let's say if I was sitting there and I was like, I want to box, and there was no future in it, he just wouldn't let me because he's clever, you know what I mean? So he supported me 100%, and when I have my first fight, you'll see why.
Are you itching to get in there, or are you looking to get as much training under your belt as possible? You're not rushing to get that debut under your belt?
I'm not rushing, it's more so I want to get back in there just because I'm a fighter and I haven't fought in a while, and I'm a competitor. I like competing, I love competing, and I haven't fought. By the time I have this fight, this will be the longest I've had off. The longest before that was 7 months. Yeah. And that was because the promotion I was with was tying me up a little bit. But there's literally nothing I can do about this because I have to get my licence and then there's getting the right show and whatever. So at this stage I understand why it's taking a bit of time. But I don't mind waiting because, as you said, there's a lot to take in, and I want to get cracking. I'll keep the ball rolling, and I'll get a good few fights in, and I'll stay busy like I always have.
Have they given you a time scale of when the possible debut could happen, when you discussed with them?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be in March, then it was April, we got a great show in April, then everything was all set for that, and then something else come up. Now it's probably going to be May. Right. Probably going to be May in Leeds.
And how active are you looking to be in sport of boxing this year? Just as many fights under your belt as you can? Yeah. As long as it makes sense. I've had, that's the thing in MMA, I always had like 5 or 6, yeah. That's a lot. Most people only have like 2 or 3, and that seems very busy, but with boxing I think I could have even more. I think I could have probably the same 5, 6. It depends what happens. Bigger fights you can afford to take longer off and whatever, so that's what I see, but I'm definitely going to stay busy. Is there anyone in the sport right now, any level, that you look at and think, I'd love to step in there with that guy?
No, not so much that. As I said, I don't sit there watching fights and study it, but you know, I watch some of these people who've got like some of the belts in, and I look at them and think their skill set, if I got in with them, there's nothing I couldn't do with, you know what I mean? So I just think my goals right now is I can't wait to get going. And I'm not just doing this as like a little stunt or whatever. I'm putting my heart and soul into this, and I'm going fully for it, and I'm gonna aim for titles and everything else in 18 months, and I'm gonna turn over fast.
Is the business side of boxing more appealing to you? And was that a pivotal part in why you've made the move from MMA? Because you mentioned that the money wasn't great, you've had issues with promoters before and stuff in MMA.
Yeah, you know, I don't fight for money, but
you need to get paid for
yeah,
what you
that's
do.
it. Yeah, that's it. So I was stuck in a position, I didn't have many options to turn to, and that's one of the reasons it makes sense. Because look at England now, it's harder boxing again. You know, maybe it dipped down a few years ago, and MMA took over a little bit. But it's going the other way now. Wembley's getting sold out every 5 minutes. You've got big arenas sold out every 5 minutes, like that with English fellas, just English fellas. You know what I mean? It's all happening right here. So yeah, that's why it makes sense. It's all happening now. Do you know what I mean?
You've been training at elite boxing for some time now in Bolton. Can you explain the impact that's had on your overall game, and how are you going to be planning on staying there during your training camps throughout your career?
Yeah, I've been there for like 3 years now. I was always there when I was having my MMA fights, and Alex Matvienko was my coach, and so when I turned over, I was only going to stay with him. I've got a great relationship with him, and he's a fantastic coach, and he gets the best sparring as well. So it's not much more I could ask for really.
There's another guy in the gym who's boxing this weekend. I don't know if you know Haslam. How far do you think he can go in terms of his career? You've obviously been around him and a few of the other guys in the gym.
No, he's great. I watch him spar against top level guys who've like completed the Olympics and whatever else, and he never looks out of his comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? And it's like anyone else. He's only young as well. I think he's younger than me. And there's like Jack Flatley there and Luke Blackledge and everyone else. It's a great team. It is a great team.
Well, I'm really excited to see you get in the boxing ring, and I hope the preparation goes well. Yeah, really great to speak to you.